SFJ 4x4 Studios presents
in my oversized four-wheel drive Jeep.
a Jeep podcast starring industry experts.
Pure monosity.
What? Say that again.
With mad scientist Scott Brown,
Use my drill press as a sort of lathe.
our host Neil Simpson,
If one light goes out, they all go out.
filled with shenanigans.
We are really professional with Jeeps.
This is I Speak Jeep.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever, however you are joining us. This is the I Speak Jeep podcast presented by SFJ4x4.com.
We don't have a camera.
My name is Neil. Jeffrey, the people listening at home, but our live people probably.
Our live people can't see anything, and
Oh.
I'm going to blame Davey because it was up, but I think his camera fell asleep.
Oh, here he comes. Savage is running. He's on a dead sprint, folks. Those of you who are actually listening, who are on our live listening,
Could it be
that
Jeff?
and
Oh, there it
and
is.
people who are listening in their ear holes, working on the factory line or driving truck cross country, they don't care about the camera. But folks who are trying to tune into us live, you do. And as an important reminder that you too can join us live most mornings, 10:19 a.m., most Monday mornings, 10:19 a.m. on
Wow.
the Book of Faces and on the YouTubes.
For those that don't listen live, we could just start over and pretend like we never had that interruption.
Anyways,
We could. We could. That would be incredibly too professional of podcasters to do that, though.
No,
So
we just own it and move on.
that's right. I am here to own my indiscretions.
Well, then I'm just going to jump to the comments because Nate was first, and he is making sure that Joe knows that he was first.
I actually want to jump in and say Bill McWilliams is kind of technically first, though Nate, he employed, as far as I'm concerned, Bill McWilliams employed Nate's attempt, and he got in my inbox first thing in this morning to show me turkeys in his backyard.
Yeah, but he didn't bring us donuts, so Nate still wins.
All right.
Giaga Jeeper says good morning. Billy Joe says good morning. Bill McWilliams said sound good, and now Facebook is off. I don't know. And then Jeannie's saying hello, everyone.
Hello. Good morning to you all. And again, for those listening at home at a later date, you too can join into the comments. You know, we typically try to recognize those who jump in early. In general, we don't
It's a
read
race
all,
to beat Nate at this point.
right? We don't read all the comments. Usually, you can get in there and have some fun and communicate with some other people, and that's all good and gravy. But otherwise, we welcome your participation. We will, however, be off live at minimum
In 2 weeks.
in 2 weeks. So 2 weeks from today, which I think is April 21,
22, maybe?
still 21.
21.
And
Okay.
and we will be off, so we may or may not have something pre-recorded for folks, but we will not be live. So just kind of, just kind of laying that out there. Today we are going to be talking about missing 10 millimeter sockets, but
Feel that.
before we get to that, joined in Grandma's Couch Studio.
Is a producer?
Were you confused?
No,
Were you-
I'm texting Davey to make sure things are good on his end because that's what we've been doing lately.
Okay.
And you just happen to look at me
I
awkwardly.
did.
as
I
I'm
did.
trying to
As you were-
message him.
He's
The
Jeff, the
Italian
stallion
right?
that was stuck on the side of 90 this morning.
I was.
But
yeah.
thankfully, he has a Jeep, and nothing illegal happened for him to get here.
Nothing illegal. I didn't get stuck in the median. That was a swamp, so we're good.
You know, I don't know how he knows that, but it's fine.
And I did hear that the accident on 90 was potentially involving a Jeep. So we hope that all of our Jeepers out there are safe.
Yes.
I also saw pictures elsewhere in the great state of Ohio with the Jeep on its lid. And so I hope that they're safe.
Oh,
So it
they're
seems
just
like,
testing their roll cage. They're fine.
right? It seemed like it was a rough morning for
It's a very
Jeepers.
Monday morning.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So
And you are, sir?
the maddest mad scientist, but I got in here and got heats going and stuff because I'm very worried about comfort. So
And what a weirdo. God, okay. Scott Brown, the mad scientist. Old Doc Brown. He's real proud of himself that he turned the heater on since,
know.
since Jeff was stuck on the side of 90.
For a half hour before I found an alternate route.
Yes.
Yes.
That's why we drive Jeeps.
That's right.
No doubt. Well, and so we drive these cool off-road rigs, and half of the fun of Jeep ownership is the fact that there is such a broad appeal to the DIY market, right? And that in much of a sense that the Jeeps are kind of like big Lego sets or erector sets, but we have to have tools, and we have to be able to keep our parts somewhere. And so today we're going to be talking about garage storage solutions.
I mean, the good part of this is we have literally done the gamut of this, where our Cherokees at one time were our garage, and the driveway was our garage.
Yeah, and I was going to say this kind of hits home for me because I whether you're fully conscious or not at home, people just looking at what the business is now, they don't know. But I was literally working out of my parents' driveway as a teenager into my young 20s, and that's kind of all I had. I had to pack in my tools and pack out my tools every night. I had a tarp in, that would cover, whatever I was working on at the time. And I used to say, and I used to even share it with you, I said, well, if I just got a garage, I would be dangerous.
Yep.
And then
If we just had heat.
and then it was like, well, if we just have heat, eventually one day I'll have lifts, and it'll just be, and I had none of that, right? And people, sometimes don't recognize that out of the gate. And of course, we have this famous story, a little bit of how my brain works, a little bit about how your enterprising self works. But I was fully into working on Jeeps, selling Jeep parts, and you needed some very specific bolts, which were
Clutch bolts.
clutch bolts,
Pressure plate bolts.
in the dirt at the back of my parents' driveway.
Yep.
Because that's where I had done like a breakdown of a particular drive line. And I was able to, again, based on the quirkiness of my brain, I knew exactly where all those bolts were packed down into the dirt.
Yep.
And you were willing to go extract them out of the dirt.
Really wanted those bolts.
Yeah, and clean them up.
It was like a
and
treasure hunt.
It was.
Well, that was early Scott. So he had anxiety about going to a strange house and going down a strange driveway. And hindsight now, I'd be like, if the ad came out and was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, I'm getting these bolts." You'd be like, oh, "Okay,
I'm getting
And
these
what-
bolts that your son left in the driveway in the dirt from when he was.
It would have been
tearing
just
stuff-
completely fine. That would
Yes.
have been satisfactory. But at that time, I was like stressing.
Yeah, you were a basket case. And I think at that time we still had this half fallen down barn, which is I would keep tools in there. And at that time, when we started, we had your standard old metal Craftsman toolboxes. I still. If you go back far enough, my grandpa Simpson, both of my grandparents were in trades or handymen at least, so they both had the classic from the back of the Handyman magazine. You used to build these wooden toolboxes that had a big dowel rod and kind of the triangles on either end, and there was a big open tool carrier.
I think I made that in metal shop in middle school.
Metal shop, or
We did a metal one.
Oh, okay.
Exactly
so I know
that
it was in
design,
wood.
but
Fancy.
Ooh, fancy! You were
in middle school metal shop.
nice. And I had like one of those blow mold cases, Craftsman tools. One of my first toolboxes, and
the dangerous
a
with
couple
those is
buckets.
after they got used too much, the latches would just spring open randomly.
Yes.
So you're carrying your toolbox. You're like, is this going to be the time I have to pick up all the things?
It was like 52 car pickup on steroids. It was worse. It was worse. The sockets would go everywhere.
Yes.
And I would have to haul it into this dilapidated barn that my parents had. I kind of had a couple falling down metal shelves that all my stuff would pack onto. And whether people from Ohio or further remember, there was a cabinet manufacturer called Youngstown Cabinets. They went global, but they were a metal cabinet manufacturer found in many 50s, 40s to 60s kitchens across the country, but even the world. And these Youngstown cabinets, while everybody did their remodels in the late 70s, 80s, and certainly 90s, they pulled the Youngstown cabinets out. And so that's what we had in the barn to store, right? That was the extent of workbench with some wood on top and these Youngstown cabinets stacked up, and that's where I kept all my stuff. And you really get an appreciation for organization if you started, yeah, you don't. You don't, Scott. We'll talk about that. I think we'll talk about that. and the way
Everything's a
that your
flat
brain
surface
works.
in his world.
Everything is a flat surface in Scott's world. But that's what I did. And then obviously we moved eventually to the barn where we had dirt floor and chickens next to us. And I started to get some shelves and we started to pack some stuff out.
Yep.
But the tool storage industry has become a multi-gazillion dollar approach. I mean, if you go into
Oh yeah.
Harbor Freight, Lowe's, Home Depot, Menards, any of the leading contenders.
You can't even walk through SEMA without being approached by mechanic tool sets and magnetic wrench hangers and all the different new contraptions that they've
Right.
come up with to help you store better.
Yeah.
And obviously, we talk about that you've seen, pack out sets, not only just in some of your leading manufacturers, but now all the knockoffs.
They're
And-
big on the rise.
And they're huge on the rise, right? And at one time we just had these, again, this wooden box that you made out of the pack of Handyman magazine. You carried a slew of tools in it,
Yeah.
And the thing is, as a business, and we talk about Plowback constantly, I'm always looking for more efficiency and storage options and the ability to move expeditiously through a service project. But recently we had one of our tool truck providers come in, and he talks about a couple shops that he goes to that have tables, like basically the cheap plastic folding tables full of tools. And one specific shop owner who has bought, what do you say, 20 some 10 millimeter sockets
Oh my,
over the last, 5-7 years or something.
that's
'Cause this
expensive.
guy-
with that tool truck.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the big tool truck, folks.
Yeah, that's
that's-
probably a $70 socket.
Yeah. Yep. And this guy just keeps buying them, but yet he has no toolboxes. He has no toolbox. He just has tables full of tools.
Could have bought the toolbox by now.
That's weird. It's why do we have that?
Yeah.
And then we also have this multi-gazillion dollar industry of tool storage and efficiency. So let's kind of start. I mean, so obviously we know where I kind of started which was literally in the dirt with some homemade or some refreshed toolboxes from my grandparents and a blow mold Craftsman set from my father. Where'd you guys start with your tool storage? And
So I guess I started with the proverbial greasy ratchet in my mouth kind of scenario where Dad was into wrenching on hot rods or old cars. So we had a lathe and a mill and a welder and eventually a lift and the whole kind of things. But he started me off with the Craftsman Club, where you used to go into your Sears and you'd get I'm playing cards had wrenches on them and hammers, and you get tools and that kind of stuff. And I had the little Craftsman toolbox that would spring open randomly with the little drawer.
Perfect.
That was my very first toolbox. And then I actually, one of the good memories is Dad, I think, picked me up from school and we went to Sears and he got me a little tool chest, a cheap one with the big door on the bottom with only like 2 drawers and a top. And I'm still actually using that top for wrenches and stuff now. And my son has the base in his room for some of his tools and that kind of stuff and books. But
Perfect.
anyway, so I did have to kind of figure it out a little bit on my own, but being able to use my dad's stuff, it will become no surprise to everyone that I used to get yelled at a lot for leaving tools out.
Wow. Would never have guessed, Scott.
no,
And,
I would have believed you were praised for it because of the
the way that your behavior is now.
and
We thought maybe you were reinforced, given a treat when you randomly place tools around the shop.
and I
good
may,
boy. You get a cookie because you left the tool on a ladder.
I may or may not have been yelled at a lot for his, my dad bought a drive-on lift, which is a pain and sometimes, but nice that you have now an 8-foot long, 2-foot wide, or 1.5 foot wide, 2 ramps to just pile all your tools
I
on.
mean, it's a mobile up and down tool shelf.
Yes. So I may or may not have gotten phone calls from my dad and yelled at that I had left that tools out, and my response was, well, I wasn't done yet.
Oh no, we're never done.
So that may or may not have happened. In the course of that, also, I had to, coming out of the house and that kind of stuff. I went to my now girlfriend, then wife, now driveway, and her dad had a little one-stall car garage that had, just a hand-me-down toolbox and tools he had picked up at secondhand shops and that kind of stuff. And his garage working space was the driveway.
Mhm.
And that kind of, for me, was eye-opening to be introduced to that from
Right, you came from such a
the greasy the wrench in my mouth kind of scenario.
yes, the greasy wrench in my mouth instead of the silver spoon.
So
That's so
funny.
true.
So I got to, change U-joints on my axle shafts on my Cherokee, in the rocks, on a block of wood, and that kind of stuff, and experience that, which made me appreciate the stuff at home
Sure.
a lot more, other than the yelling and contention with that. But that's kind of where I started, and then I had to then, over the course of, I was able to keep some of my dad's stuff, but I had to kind of start from scratch on my own thing. And that's why I tell people, like, I lost dad in 2009, and a lot of the stuff had to go away. And I'm just now trying to get back sort of where he was, sans lift, because I just don't have the space for it.
Mm-hmm.
But having the lathe and the mill and being able to do that. And then I remember early days, he had old machines that he had to fuss with. And I remember when the new lathe showed up, and, the mill was always kind of a good thing. And here I am trudging through fixing old machines, and I'm like, yep,
Yes.
here I am.
Yep.
And so,
Well, and I think that, one of the pieces that I think both gives you perspective and depth is the fact that you did have this highly elaborate childhood experience in the automotive world.
yep.
But that it got, for one way or another, got taken away from you.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas there's a lot of people, certainly at the highest level of contending automotive shops, that it could be a multi-generational experience that kid has grown up and kind of only known, say initially your experience, or even what our kids have gone through, is kind of, they've only known this
The shop.
more elaborate shop experience.
Yep.
And God willing, that will continue. But in your situation, it all kind of went away abruptly.
Yeah.
And, and so it kind of gives you some depth or perspective to say, okay, now I have to, again, this is
Figure
what
it
dad
out.
had created.
Yep.
And that's cool. But now what can I create?
And I
how
feel
do
like
get back to
you
that?
are skill set wise probably more advanced than where your dad was, because of your constant working at it and improving and learning.
I think at this point, probably I am, especially with the sheet metal stuff. He never had the reason or resources to do that stuff, or the desire to do that. And it is definitely a weird scenario, because your dad's always your superhero. He's always the bar to measure yourself to. So it is weird to hear that often.
Yeah, but
100%.
you're at the point now that you're the one that's passing that skill set on to your son, and
Trying.
the circle has revolved.
And the toolbox, literally. In this
Yes,
situation.
and literally the toolbox. And now I'm yelling at him for leaving stuff laying around. I don't know where.
How do you know it's not your tools?
I was going to say, how do you know?
Because now they're laying in the yard.
Oh God.
That's a little bit
I
different.
used to do that to my family all the time too.
I know you did.
Oh. Jeffrey, where did you start in your
So,
tool storage experience?
Well, as a kid, we grew up in a trailer park. We had a gravel driveway with railroad ties at the end of it, so we knew where the end of the driveway was.
That's right.
And we had a tool shed, because you couldn't keep tools in the trailer because it was a single wide trailer with a family of 5.
Right.
So we had a tool shed, and that's where they were kept. And the organization was, and I mean, to this day, my dad still does this with his sockets, but he has a clear tote just filled with sockets. And if you wanted a 10 mil, you might be digging for a half an hour to find the 10 mil
Yeah.
in the bin of sockets.
Yeah.
So that's where that started. As a teenager, I remember it was kind of like a white elephant Christmas game we were doing,
Mhm.
and I had ended up with this black toolbox, which you just commented on because I still use that
well,
black
and actually,
toolbox to
so
this day.
funny, and I'm going to take off. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm going to divert here. And when we were talking about some aspects of what are some topics that we could be discussing, I enjoy when you've been coming to work on the house, you show up and you carry this toolbox like my grandfather's did, like I once did. You know what I mean? And he reaches in and he pulls out this, it's politely, it's run of the mill, like it's
Yep.
a hammer that just works. It's a wrench or a pair of pliers that just works.
Yep.
Now the whole industry is on bigger and flashier pliers and side cuts and
Yep.
adjustable wrenches and whatnot. And it's like, there used to be a time where it was all like, you would go to the garage sale and you would just pick up a pair of pliers. And if a pair of pliers worked, I mean, if it didn't work well enough, that meant you weren't squeezing hard enough. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yep.
And now
Or
it's
if
all
they're-
like,
Spray a little lube in them and you're good to go.
Or
Right.
if they were that big of garbage, you threw them away and you went and found another pair of pliers that did work.
Right.
but not like today's standard where
Yeah.
we have this.
Yeah, you
high
weren't spending
sellability.
$70 for a pair of pliers.
Right. And we're not even talking about the tool truck. I'm talking about what's migrated into your box store,
Right.
Oh, yeah.
tool experiences. And so actually, you showing up with this plastic, but nice
And it was
toolbox.
It was so cool because when I got it, it had the wrap around it, the plastic or label, whatever that would said, "This is so strong you can park a truck on it." It had a picture of a truck parked on 4 boxes, one under each wheel.
classic marketing.
And honestly, it has held the test of time
Do
because
you know what brand it is by chance?
not a clue.
Not a clue.
Not a clue.
See, and that's the other part.
I don't care.
I am a Milwaukee guy. Just so we are clear, Jason will joke and he'll be like, "You would be a cheap tool guy if it wasn't about keeping up with the Joneses." And I'm like, you know what? That might be true.
It's
I might-
100% true.
If, I don't know that I would still get caught with a Ryobi in my hand, but
Yeah, that's rough.
we are all drawing our lines by today's society standards. Whether you're a DeWalt, a Rigid, a Makita, a Milwaukee.
We were doing the episode about tools a while back,
Right.
And my brother texts me after the episode. He goes, "I don't know how I feel about your show anymore because all my tools are Ryobi."
I am here to judge you. That's okay.
That's what I told him.
My father-in-law had his fair share of Ryobi tools.
But my brother also might use a screwdriver once in a year. So I'm
And-
like,
and
you know what? That's a great tool for
If you go to my house build, you will see a Ryobi tool or two kicking around.
yeah.
literally being kicked out of the lab as we continue to work. But yeah, so having that option, and then I rented apartments most of my life, so I never really had great storage. So I had a tool closet, and what I learned was that little black box that I have was my universal toolbox. If I knew what I was going to be working on, I'd switch the tools out in that box for what I'm going to work on. I still do that to this day, and that's what I do for your house. So if I know we're going to be working on electrical, the box is filled with electrical tools. If I know we're going to be working on plumbing, I've got the plumbing tools on there. If I know I'm going to be working on just carpentry stuff, the hammer, the tape measure, square, things like that are going to be in there.
Sure. And I mean, and if my point wasn't clear before, it's this idea that you don't even know what the brand is
Not a
of
clue.
that toolbox. And you remember this elaborate marketing scheme, if you will. But by today's standards, people are separating themselves and they are proudly representing their pack out kits, their book bags. People are having this sense of identification with their tool brands and the tool storage situations.
I feel called out.
Yes, because you are through and through a Milwaukee
Yeah.
guy, to say the least.
So let's talk about not where we came from, but what does your garages or your tool storage currently at home look like?
So I'm into realizing.
Flat surfaces. You're into flat surfaces.
Well, I do clean them sometimes. Anyway,
I'm totally interrupting you while you collect your thoughts, because both guys towards the end of the week, because I got so diligent after both of them, it was like this uncomfortable chastising moment because both Scott and Greg ended up cleaning up flat surfaces and getting rid of both of them. And I didn't feel like I was being overly demanding or firm in the process, but both of them were like, I cleaned this. I took care of this. You can get off my back now because I got rid of this thing. And both of them had to give up flat surfaces.
My question is,
in either workspace.
My question is, I know in Greg's situation, he probably put the tools where they actually go. How many of them from Scott's just got migrated to another surface and condensed?
I looked at the flat surface that I wanted Scott to get rid of.
You know
and
what,
I
right?
said to him, so just for our listeners at home, both of them had it was about a 2 foot by somewhere between 40 and 48 inch. One was like a metal cart, like a tool cart that we needed to repurpose for storage solutions. Again, just as we look to improve ourselves. Another one was a flat surface that just became a catch-all. It was a really robust bench work surface that years ago when we were starting out, there was a kid and he was just he was going to the VOED and he just needed some extra practice and some extra work. And we brought him in and we got him equipped with some really rudimentary tools, really standard carpentry stuff. We never told anybody. We just helped this kid out. He was, kind of from a rough area, within our local vicinity. And we got him, a tool bag and a tape measure and a whole bunch of stuff. And then I paid him, I don't know, a couple bucks to build some workbenches.
Yep.
And this was one of the workbenches, I believe, that he had built. Maybe we had repurposed, we had changed some stuff on it. We'd been using it
was
up
like
till
on
recently.
its fourth life.
It was like on its fourth life, and it had just become a catch-all for us. And so I asked Greg to get rid of that from the performance department, if you will, and Scott to get rid of this cart so we could repurpose the cart. And so I walked over to Scott. And Scott has been attempting to do, 11 different projects. And here I am harping on him to get rid of this cart so that we could organize jack stands and some other stuff. And he was going to get to it. He's going to get to it. I finally started taking one piece away, whether he knew it or not. I would come past the cart, I would grab something and I would move it somewhere else. I'd put it away. Finally, I came up to him and I was like, do you just want me to grab a bucket? And I'll throw all that in the bucket and we'll just scrap whatever. And he looked at me dead in the face. It was it was that look don't you dare touch anything on this cart. I don't think he knew that I had already been walking by grabbing little things and organizing them or throwing them away. And I was like, well, let me just get a bucket and I'll throw all that stuff in. And he just stared at me like he could see through my soul, And he was like, no, I'll take care of it. And he did it right then and there. And I was like, oh yeah, we're keeping all of that at this point.
No.
So who knows where it went.
I filled a 5-gallon pail with a lot of it. It's all going out in the can.
Okay.
Okay. I do know that was really funny because he was like, at one point there was an electrical line here, the armored cable. I'm not sure where that went. And we're just
I was like, I don't know where that went either.
Maybe why I was looking for parts for the Jeep.
No. You're
Maybe.
looking for parts because there's 11 different flat surfaces
fair.
that have parts on them.
But
All
anyway,
right,
which way?
yes.
So now currently in my garage, I'm realizing I need specific boxes for specific things. So I finally broke down and used a box for metalworking tools. So body hammers, dollies, my tin snips, that kind of stuff all goes in that cabinet on the surface where I put the big pieces of sheet metal down. And that's working pretty good. I built my own shop press, and I put storage up in the handle or the top of the press. So the handle for it and some other handles go in that. I'm needing to find something for the machines. So I need ideally a bottom and a top machinist box where I can put bits and the specific tools for those. And I'm kind of, this is the downfalls. I remember what Dad had, and I kind of would like to have some of those Kennedy boxes that were made specifically for machinists with the felt line drawers and that kind of stuff. So they're not banging up that delicate equipment. But man, those stuff's expensive.
Ooh, to say the least.
So, and then I have
Beat up, it's expensive.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Ran over with a truck is expensive.
Yes.
But then I have just a regular tool chest, not as nice as the one here, obviously. You have to be careful on it. If you let too many drawers open, it is definitely falling on you. And that's where most of my automotive tools are. And then I still have my dad's workbench, and he, of course, made storage in the bottom of that. and that's honestly some of that is just kind of left as he had it, because it's some, we have a joke of like, well, my dad's name was Fred. Fred's still providing for the business. He just went through some of his stuff that I was able to save, and bushings and little trinkets. Actually, I have to wait till the end to find out what I'm using from his hoard to fix the mill. I won't give it up now, but that's what I'm finding is it's needing to be more specific, like which Greg takes us to the next level. He has an electrical toolbox, he has a carpentry toolbox, he has all that, which I did try to listen to, and I have like a specific house one in the house. I'm also not above, I'll say this for my wife's benefit, to store things in unique locations, like car parts under the bed or in the basement, or I don't know, in the living room.
Why are we not surprised?
No,
And,
nobody's surprised.
And if it's not decor, because I have to specify, because there's a lot of automotive decor in my house, she has taken upon herself to make me piles
Of
and
vehicle
tell,
parts in
and
the
tell
house?
me that needs to go to the garage.
I mean,
that
like,
might
some
exist
people-
in my house too.
Like some people walk in with like maybe a screw or a bolt or something in their pocket. Scott like walks in with an alternator, like sets it down on the coffee table,
They happen.
and he continues through to the bathroom or the kitchen
I have
or
maybe
something.
gotten boxes for the 36 project, pulled them in, opened it all up, and she's like, "Why didn't you just open it in the garage?" I don't know,
Yeah, that's a good point.
because I wanted to be with you while I opened this.
Nice.
Wow.
So, is there something that you find yourself uniquely drawn to in your garage storage solutions? I have obviously an answer in my mind.
So do
already. Okay.
So, for me, some of it has to be in sight of mind kind of stuff. So I really like I'm rude and crude, but I like my squares that I use a lot for the sheet metal. Literally put a screw in the wall, hang them all there. They're all, I have like 3 of them,
Mm-hmm.
but I can see on a flash if Scott has been bad and not put them back.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of in your face, where it is, kind of thing. So I kind of like being able to have stuff out on the wall. I remember like the old school machinists where they had, tools hanging every wrench. You had
Yeah,
one
shadow
time had
boards.
that for a while. I kind of like that. Toolboxes can get over full quickly, especially when you're me and not wanting to spend $20,000 on a toolbox. So toolbox here is stuffed. This toolbox at home is stuffed. Constantly having to do the drawer shuffle
Mm-hmm.
to get the drawer to open or close. That kind of sucks. So I kind of like the in your face kind of to that, because it's easier not to outgrow it.
Mm-hmm.
There's always another spot in the garage wall where you can put a screw or a shelf or something like that, and you can put it up there. Where a toolbox, you just instantly outgrow it. It feels like as soon as your skills improve or your direction changes a little bit, now you need more space.
Sure. I do think is sort of unique. We have to kind of preface, or maybe could or should have before. We're obviously, because of our own inclination, automotive and carpentry, that's going to be kind of foremost. None of us are just by career path or even side hustle are your traveling handyman type character.
Right.
So I am always jealous of guys who have enclosed trailers or box trucks. I understand the need for the more rugged and dare I say industrialized pack out kits because they're
Some of
constantly
those are pretty awesome.
they are, because much like the Kennedy box
Yes.
for machinists, and I am familiar with those. And if you're not, as you're a listener at home, think about a toolbox, but the best toolbox you've ever seen, but on steroids, basically,
Yeah.
is what Kennedy boxes are, machinist boxes are in general. And that's part of that industry. Whereas again, with a traveling handyman or contractor, you need the rigidity, the ruggedness of the industrial pack-out boxes, because you're buying it now and you're hoping that in 3, 5, 7 years, you're still in and out of that, much like we are our metal toolboxes.
Yeah.
So I recognize that, but of course, what we're going to be talking about outside of Jeffrey and his carry along tool chest, which is your standard size toolbox. None of us at this point. I once was mobile with my tools,
Yeah.
and I had to have a consideration for that mobility when I was doing a lot of infield picking or having to show up at a location and make a Jeep mobile.
I would
that kind
argue
of stuff.
that I do a lot of the traveling handyman type stuff, but I just take tools that aren't meant to be mobile. So
Not surprised.
But you also haven't heavily invested. I know a
No,
number of people who have really succinctly organized their tools into these pack out kits.
correct.
I mean,
I use them at
honestly-
home too often to worry about that, and that's exactly your point.
Right, and that's right. That's exactly it. And I'm acquaintance of the business. Great guy who runs a handyman business, and he actually does all of his contracting out of a Jeep LJ. So that's the long wheelbase TJ Wrangler. So 04 to 06, and he just has beautiful Milwaukee pack out set, and he just has all of his tools easily accessible through his Jeep. It's actually pretty impressive. Cool in nature. For me, I was going to say where I am particularly drawn to, I am a pegboard guy, which is not, by what I now understand as I survey the world, which is not your average, right? It was a time where tons of people had pegboards in their garages and their workspaces, and not everybody does. But I love a pegboard because of exactly what you said. I want to be able to see my tools. They're not quite a shadow board in the sense that I have like the tool outlined, but I'm also I'm a firm believer in not having duplicate or triplicate tools, because for me, and I've been in other shops, and if you don't know about me, I mean, I used to go pal around and bum around in a whole bunch of guys' shops and mentors, and I appreciate what they did for me. But I was in, from, just your hole in the wall local service garage, because I was just a snot-nosed teenager who didn't know I didn't belong anywhere, and so I just kind of like wanted to hang out with these guys and learn from them, and hang out in the garage and see what they were working on and work on some of our own projects and stuff. So I've seen from people who just kept things in buckets all the way to, high precision, well invested in toolboxes and whatnot. But I don't buy duplicates and triplicates of tools. I want to have like, this is my wrench, and when my wrench is missing, I go and find it. I know that if this socket is gone, then that I need to find this
I
socket.
thought wrenches were like carpentry pencils. You just throw them
You
out in
just
the
throw
shop
them.
so that when you need it, it's somewhere in the shop
It's
nearby.
somewhere, and you're kicking around.
You've got 10 of them laying around, and you just pick one up and use it.
Right.
Feel called out.
Other than and like, so I'm conscientious of these characters. Now understand that I'm not one of our lead mechanics by any stretch anymore. I made do and did what I needed to do mechanically within the business, and so now I am not as prolific with my tools as say Scott or Greg are, or even Jeff had to be for a while there. But I'm like, these guys who have like 11 different 3/8 ratchet wrenches doesn't make sense to me. I want one or two good ones that I know how they work and they're predictable.
And the
outcomes.
benefit is, at least in our shop now, if you go in and you're like, well, I actually need, 4 9/16 wrenches, there's a blue toolbox over there you can go use the 9/16 wrench out of.
Is that why my 10 mil's missing?
Yeah.
Let's actually talk about my 10 mil
I was
is
gonna say,
legitimately missing. So yours is missing from your box currently, but I know where it's at.
Oh.
Probably because he's left it somewhere randomly.
I
around
heard
the
he's
shop.
ransoming my 10 mil.
I am.
So I'm a pegboard guy. I have things out. I want to know exactly where they are. I don't want to have a whole bunch of extras. I'm also a work surface guy. So workbenches, work surfaces. I know that's uniquely like something that I want or I need. I also want to be able to access my work surface, though I almost always go from like a 4-foot work surface down to about 20 inches by 20 inches. It
Because
just
of
seems
flat
to
surfaces.
because of flat surface issues,
Yes.
right? I just always, I just can't get away from that one. The other thing I've recently discovered, and this is just like my cheapness, is these plastic totes that you can get in, Walmart, Menards, even the dollar stores have them. They're basically like 10 inches by 14 inches.
Yeah, it's the socket
And-
drawers that I was talking about. That's what my dad uses.
Is that what he's using
Yes.
for socket drawers? He says, no, those are the socket drawers. So at my for purposes of the house build, I've got like one of those dedicated to like tape measures and measuring and writing utensils. So
Yeah, you
within
have
there-
for not wanting to have multiple tools. You have like 20 tape measures in your house.
All right, that is a Fred Brown situation, and that is 100% a lesson that I've learned from Fred Brown by extension of Scott. I learned from Scott by extension of Fred. I don't know either how you say that, but absolutely the fact that, and the only thing I don't have is my name on every single tape measure. Fred put his name on every single tape measure. I don't know where he was working. He was scared. He did not want somebody to take those tape measures.
That's funny.
Well, Dad also had boxes for specific use. And I mean, he did garage doors and vending machine repair and all that kind of stuff. So you would have something for that. And in that box would be a tape measure, would be drill bits, would be all that kind of stuff. And that would be specifically for that use. So because of that, he had, I don't know, 11 tape measures. And one of the things I hoarded when we were dissolving the shop was some of his tape measures with his name on them. But I also remember him going and like, some people buy new shoes when they want to feel nice, and somebody would go buy new pants. He would go buy a nice tape measure, and especially if you could find one with the clip on the bottom where you pressed it to have it lock. Oh, buddy, he was on a
He
hoard.
was jazzed up over
He
that.
was hoarding that. You go over to like his desk, and he'd have like a brand new tape measure hidden down in that drawer. That's for later.
I
That's for
feel
when
that in my soul. I'll keep them in the package still, and I'll pull it out. I know that feeling.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I didn't realize that that's what he was doing because I know that feeling.
Yes.
My wife and son once got me a tape measure just like for Father's Day. Like I'm like, yeah, this is great. You know,
I may or may not have a couple of
Father's
Dad.
Day.
Tape measures.
Oh, I love it. Well, anyways, that's one of my little cheap hacks. Was I bought those I think for Walmart, and then I managed to organize all of the different little pieces around the house build so that I can just go there for tape measure, measuring, or for some drill bits, or for gloves. I have one just dedicated for extra gloves. The other thing with the house build is, as much as I really want to live in the house, it's been so fun as a journey of having other people come in. And when we can speak intimately here at SFJ, because we use each other's tools, and that's always like a weird adult faux pas thing.
I was gonna say, I've been told multiple times, "Well, you keep your box locked, right?" No, we all share.
Yeah.
But who's gonna steal your tool? They're not stealing the tools. It's
But we might misplace them.
we misplace them.
But then
Flashlights
honestly-
get left on exhaust and melted, but
Oh, that's fair.
Realistically, I think that of our incident rate is actually very low compared to what I've been familiar with outside in the world,
Yep.
And the damage or accidental loss or anything like that is, again, very low.
Yeah.
Again, when our tool truck providers come in and they share with us what's going on in other places,
Yeah.
or
The foolishness.
what we're familiar with. And so what I was saying about my own house build is having other people come in and help and be part of that journey with us. And so if you show up and we put you to work, you might want a pair of gloves, you might need a tape measure, you might need a writing utensil, pens and pencils. I don't care who you are, where you're at in life.
They always disappear.
That's always disappearing. You're not winning any way, shape, or form that way. So I always try to have extras, especially when Scott's involved. And
we had a case of hidden markers.
we did.
I think they're not so hidden anymore.
I know where they're at. I'm just not using them.
Sure, you're not.
Flying in the sand. We might have had a Milwaukee marker incident, which, if Milwaukee's hearing, I definitely would love a sponsorship, especially of your markers.
of Inksol markers.
There might
to
be
say the
why
least.
I have a drawer dedicated to them at home because,
That's where all the markers are at.
Right, they're all
No.
at home. And
In
in
his drawer.
it was a
his
pack
drawer.
I bought.
I was honestly thinking about getting him like green Milwaukee Inksols. You know what I mean?
Ooh.
Like just
That way we
will
knew
be
they were
his
his.
color. We know that he is that, and if he is caught with a black one in his hand,
That helps
we know
me,
that he's
honestly.
taken it.
That's why if you come to the shop, there'll be, I don't know, 10 water bottles without the label on them. I know they're mine.
Right.
And I just, when I get thirsty, I look around like, where did Scott leave a water
A water
bottle?
bottle.
Which flat surface is it on?
So
All of
if
them.
it's green, I'm like, oh, that was my bad. I left
Yeah,
that
marker.
laying there.
I know. That's what I've been trying to figure out what color I give you. But technically, my paint marker is green.
Oh,
So I don't know that I want to mix are paint marks. And folks that are home and you may or may not be familiar unless you've received service from us. We are all color coordinated as far as our paint markers for torquing bolts are concerned.
Until Greg steals your color.
Greg is usually on the yellows, the oranges, the peaches.
I know he's using pink right now,
Oh.
or red, and I'm supposed to be that. But I was like, okay, I just see you, Greg.
Oh, I didn't know he was on the red at this point. He must be out of markers.
Maybe
All right, what kind of tool specialty? What's unique to you?
that I do a lot of custom building of my own storage.
Which was very popular one time, and actually, I thought it was almost serendipitous this morning. I saw the coolest, kind of reminded me of you, because we used to build our own tool storage.
Yep.
Yes.
We didn't go to the Home Depot and have an entire frontage of the building.
11.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you keep saying 11, which we use religiously here. I used 11 billion the other day in a meeting, right? We tried, the meeting tried to move on. Within 30 seconds of attempting to move on, they kind of stopped and said, it looked at me and goes, Neil, is 11 billion actually a word? And I was like, no, but apparently you haven't talked to me enough.
Welcome to SFJ.
Right.
But yeah, so the custom storage nature is one of the things that I like
Yeah.
to do, and that's where I built that station or saw station just recently.
Yes.
To give me more mobile workspace because it's
Sure.
on the caster, so I can move it around as I'm working with 2 different saws built into it. But also along the pegboard conversation, when I had my store in Erie, we had slat walls that we put up.
Yes.
So I kept one of those and I put that on the wall for my tools, and I have all the slat wall pegs for it.
Mhm.
And my experience is that actually can hold more weight than a pegboard.
Mm.
So I really enjoy that. I've got a couple of the slat wall shelves across the top of
Yes.
it,
Yep.
and then the rest are the pegs, and I have all my wrenches hanging from there. I've got my saw blades hanging from there. Just a multitude of different things. So
Right.
it makes it real easy to quickly look over and go, oh, yep, that's where it's at.
Right.
I've actually been really enjoying watching you outfit. When first started for the business, first time over your house, your garage is like, oh, it's a dangerous zone in there. Don't even go in there. To now you're cultivating and outfitting and making benches and making stuff purposely. And I feel that because I have also been trying to do that with the metal stuff. It's awesome to watch you do flipping tables and revolving saws and all that kind of stuff to make it more useful. That's one of the things that we all have been done a good job of. We don't have acres of roof to store all this stuff. We have to figure out how do we make as much use of our space as possible.
Well, and I think one of the other things that I'm really good at is I'm a bargain hunter. So, not to the level that you and Amy are, but my toolbox that I have at home, which I used here at the shop for a little bit, and I have the standing cabinet that goes next to it. I got both of those at a screaming deal at Lowe's because the toolbox was a scratch and dent and the cabinet was a scratch and dent, and I worked a deal with the manager. Hey, I'll take both off your hands right now if you do it for this price, and negotiated that down and saved a ton of money. And the reason I got it for such a good deal is the tall cabinet, the lock mechanism on it doesn't have the lock ring on it to hold it in
Sure.
place, so it doesn't work. I could get a lock ring if I really want. I don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How often do you lock your
I
tools in your
don't.
own garage?
Right. It's
you
got the
know?
magnetic doors, so they stay shut. Like, not a big deal.
Yeah.
So it's simple like that. And then I've got multiple ladders, so I've got ladder hooks that I can hang the ladders on. I've got things like that to keep it all off the ground. The newest thing that I've been using, we picked up a couple of years ago. I think it was actually from her parents. But they're like a giant twister tie essentially.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Little foam covering.
yeah.
On it. Yep.
I love them. I hang the kids' bikes from the ceiling. Their scooters or their skateboards, they're all hanging from the ceiling at this point.
Isn't that fun? It's unique. I've had a couple. I'm like, I really can't figure out how they work for me. And
I couldn't figure it out for a while, and then the one day I was like, I wonder if it would work. And man, they can hold some weight.
I really tie up
They're
some of
really
my-
easy to use.
my extension cords, maybe some hose. You know what I mean? When a garden hose, that's really what I typically use them for. But I haven't used it enough. But I see how that would work for you.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it's really cool how you can hang stuff with that.
Yeah, I think with any of us, our own home garages have become a little bit of a side project to allow us to experience a little bit of the efficiency that we are always pushing so hard for professionally.
Yes.
Because when it comes to our professional sphere, there's I think I'd like to say at this point there's a less is more type of approach. Again, I've been to a number of shops where there's stuff just piled up right up to the lift, basically. Again, with tables of parts and tools that are overflowing, and you kind of can't find stuff.
And you go back to even how we were as a shop when I started, and the lack of efficiencies, and how much more efficient we are now because we removed all of those shelving of parts, and we organized and sorted, and we made it more accessible by adding space to the shop at the same time.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that's just, you can see that growth and you can see that efficiency, and it just makes you better. And at home, as you're doing it with your own garage, you can actually improve.
Sometimes it's too easy to just like, well, I'll add a table or I'll add this box, that kind of stuff. And that's why I've honestly been very slow to purchase a box for the machines, because I'm like, no, it needs to be a specific size. It needs to go in a certain spot, and it needs to have enough space in it. So I'm not going to settle for, like, say, one with like my old box where it just has a door on the bottom, and now everything goes and just lives in a pile in the bottom of the box. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to wait and purposely find the deal with the amount of space I need so that I can expand into it.
Yes.
Where at one time it was like, oh, you can't figure out where that is, or oh, that table's full. Oh, we'll just pull out another table. Well, next thing you know, you have 80 tables. They're all full. And now you need to spend 2 days cleaning everything.
It's like every kitchen in Midwest America has a junk drawer.
Yes.
Some have multiple junk drawers.
Yes.
You know,
Oh.
I wonder how many people in their
Me?
garages have junk drawers in their toolboxes or in their garage itself. you
Also
know?
me.
Right. Well, right. I mean, I think about my own toolbox here, and
I allow me one random drawer in each toolbox.
In each toolbox.
in each toolbox. Perfect. Perfect. I mean, I do think it's interesting. I want to spend the last couple minutes, talking about the fact that this has become such a multi-million-dollar industry. And so where is it going? What is coming of it? Because we've seen at one point in time, I mean, kind of just out into the universe, you had Snap-on and Matco making toolboxes. I mean, there might have been a couple other. Obviously, Kennedy was making machinist boxes, but they never got into the standard homeowner, garage owner type of stuff.
I'll be honest. I've been in some really wicked garages that are just totally tricked out. All the pack outs, all the boxes, the most organized. I mean, it's a dream garage. I don't think they know how to use any of the tools in them.
I understand. It's
because they're spending the money to have the look.
Yeah, it's like
rather than actually having the purpose and the function.
It's like when we were kids and you collect sports cards or Pokemon cards.
But you go into Scott's garage and you're like, oh, this guy uses his tools.
And
like there's a big definable difference between.
Sure. I get it. Now, the challenge I have is some consumers don't know how to define that, because we get customers who are like, oh, yeah, I went to this garage, but now they're closed. And I'm thinking, I saw that garage when they were open. I was like, what made you go to them? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
So there's a weird thing to go, hey, it looks where stuff gets done. And it looks, hey, it's too pristine. It doesn't look like you're doing anything.
Now, I will argue the opposite of this, because I actually got to tour a NASCAR facility, a garage where they actually did all the tune-ups on the vehicle, all the service of engines, everything.
It's a hospital.
Oh my, it was cleaner than a hospital. There wasn't a speck of dirt anywhere.
They have a full crew that just cleans.
It was unbelievable. I mean, there was 20 different cars, all the same car, obviously, but 20 different ones. Same number, same racer. They had a wall of numbers. It was the magic wall of numbers that you weren't allowed to take pictures of. You could take pictures of the rest of the shop as long as you didn't get that wall, because it had the secret numbers for the different tracks.
Oh, okay.
The tuning and suspension and all that.
Right.
And it was pristine. There wasn't a drop of oil on that floor anywhere.
Right.
Mhm.
I would have felt more comfortable eating off of that floor than most restaurant tables. It was that clean in there.
That's
I
awesome.
remember my dad toured those shops and then came home and yelled at me about my flat surfaces.
I'm sure. I'm sure. And that was one of those. I mean, that is exactly it. Where with the Dream Garage, that's what that was.
Right.
Everything had a place. It was all perfectly clean. The
Streamlined.
wrenches were wiped down before they got put away. You
Hmm.
would have never known that they were used. It was unbelievable.
Well, and I just don't think that that's realistic or replicable for the average.
Not for the average.
the average
No.
individual
Like,
who's going to be working on their lawnmower, doing a household project for their family member, and then doing a project on their Jeep.
no,
you
like
know?
Scott said, they have a whole team of it, and there's a lot of money involved in NASCAR.
100%.
Yeah.
Now, I do want to jump to the comments because there's a lot of talk about, just peanut butter jelly jars, coffee cans. My grandfather had one that was out of the, again, back of the Handyman magazine. Used to have the jars with the metal
Mason
lids.
jars.
Well, yeah,
So-
they had mason jars, but these were like your food jars with the metal lids because all
Yeah.
that, and you would
What a
screw it
mason
up into
jar
the
is.
bottom. Yeah, but the mason jar's too big, right?
No,
So
they have
this
different
was-
sizes.
I know they do. I know.
It's
God
literally a
bless it,
mason jar.
Jeffrey. It
So
wasn't.
anyways,
You would screw it up into the bottom of the shelf, and
Yeah,
then
you just.
Yep.
I,
you thumbed it in like a light bulb.
I remember
you know?
really industrious ones. They had them rotating, so they
Yes.
had all the jars turned at 90 degrees, more jars.
the other one I've seen is where they hose clamp the jars to the wall, so that the jar itself is hose clamped, and you can just reach in for loose screws, nuts, and bolts.
Mm.
And then my dad, he brought unique things like always, Pringle cans. He had
Right.
the cardboard ones, and then when they came out with the plastic ones, he was like,
That was a thing.
that was
right?
such a thing. And I remember him like, well, I'm gonna, he'd snack. He's like, well, I'm getting that for the can.
And the problem is, I still have trouble throwing away these nice plastic and robust, plastic or glass jars. I'm like, this could be really good for holding this stuff. And I'm like, what?
The
let
funny
it go.
part is, I'm still using the Pringle cans that my dad had.
That's
like
awesome.
drywall screws. And he would take the time, he'd take a little piece of wire and he'd poke 2 holes in the lid and he'd put 1 screw in there so you could look at the thing. Oh, that's that screw and that's that screw.
That's actually pretty cool.
That's smart.
And I'm still literally using that. And then he would put them in a milk crate because they all stand up pretty nice in there. And now you can take all your screws with you, boom, and it's quick.
Well, I think, despite the fact that you walk into any Home Depot or Lowe's, Menards, pick your poison, Ace Hardware, you're going to find this growing multi-million-dollar
Almost
industry.
overwhelming.
It is.
And it is awesome, and it's neat, and it's a good thing to see, both for our for our pursuits of anything being handy. There's always going to be a place for milk crates and Pringles cans.
I love milk
and,
crates.
um,
Milk
and-
crate storage is the
and
best.
nostalgic old plastic toolboxes, because it's about getting the job done so much, as much or more than how it looks in the process, like
Yep.
you were saying. This was a fun one. We love the conversation that was going on in there. We'd love to hear from you regarding your storage solutions. And, we're going to have an opportunity for you to be emailing indirectly to the show in the future. We'll let you know what that email is, but just so you know, we want to hear your stories as well, as we may end up sharing them on the program or in some type of little special featurette just for our download listeners specifically. Again, friendly reminder, we will not be in 2 weeks from now. If you enjoyed this, obviously, there's also a sister podcast called The American Hustle. It's about leadership, entrepreneurship, and just downright being a decent human being. So you can check that one out as well. And if you want to hear what's going on in our personal lives, you should hang in there. And right after the outro, we'll be back on air to kind of give you an update from our weekend. Until then, Jeep on.
Jeep on.
Jeep on.
SF
I started the intro
I
instead of
see
going back
that.
to the screen. Whatever.
So
I
I'll
was trying to buy Neil more time to come back. He had to go
that's
do
okay. I'll
something
just
quick.
do my update. So what I did over the weekend was a lot of fighting with my mill.
Oh, you're still going on that.
I'm still going on that. Made a mistake of they had one function, it didn't function, and I was like, I'm gonna tear it apart. I'm gonna figure out what it was, and I've seen this before with like manual transmissions. It's amazing how something can operate but be completely broken and garbage at the same time. And that's what this was. Gears were broken, keyways were split, and shafts were ruined, and all kinds of stuff. Now, normally, other than the expense, this would not be a big deal, but I foolishly,
Could you use the mill to make those parts?
I could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
It
what
was
I
pretty
figured.
great if I had a working mill.
Yeah.
Anyway, I bought an import Bridgeport copy. So back in the 70s, this was a thing where you get a Taiwanese mill. And my dad's mill actually was. So I wasn't scared of it. But we never fixed or had to repair his mill.
Yeah.
And now I'm learning about how conversion from millimeters to inches and back and forth, how things can be ish the same, but not.
Yeah.
And in woodworking, this stuff would be great because, you know, you got a 1/4 inch plus or minus. In machine shop world, no. So thankfully I do have a lathe. So I've been doing a lot of little bit taken off here and a little bit taken off there. And okay, so now I took off there. Now I got to take off some here. And the part I think people will most enjoy, and I'm glad Neil's back for this. There's a little special carriage that goes up in the head of the mill, and that takes rotational force off the spindle, turns it 90 degrees, and goes down to make the auto feed down work. And I had purchased a used Bridgeport one to put in there, and I kind of put it in. I thought it was all going great until I tried to put the top gear train back on, and then you couldn't shift it anymore.
Oh dear.
So I was like, okay, it's repeatable. Every time you put that on, you can't shift it. So I took it apart, and I'm like, okay, I still have the old carriage, our assembly. Let's look at it and look at this one. Oh, look, that one's a little taller. Oh, look, that pad's a little bit thicker. Oh, look, that one's a little bit off. And got out the mics, and then I was like, oh, that's that's 20
Sizable difference.
that's a little bit this and that. So I was like, okay, I need to use the carriage from the mill, but all the parts are broken in it. So I started taking apart the other one, and can I put the parts into it? Oh, well, yeah, I can, except for, it's a little bit short or too long here, and it's a little bit long there. And oh, by the way, this hole's too big. So I need to put the mill back together without the auto feed down, so I can use an end mill.
So you need to actually mill the part that you just purchased.
No, the old part, because it's too big for the Bridgeport part. Bridgeport parts turn down smaller. So I went through my dad's hoard of plastic bins of bushings, and in there is a Chevy leaf spring bushing.
Perfect.
And it is perfect size for the piece that needs to go in the carriage. And it's bigger than the hole currently in the carriage. And I happen to have an end mill that I just purchased secondhand that is the exact size to make a hole in the carriage the right size for the outside of the bushing.
My head's spinning right now.
Right?
And I just have to cut the bushing down. So in long story, layman's term, I'm going to use a Chevy leaf spring bushing cut down, and I'm going to put the mill back together good enough to machine it so I can put it in the mill to then make this function, I think.
That's awesome.
Finishes up with, I think.
When you're
Until-
using the tool to fix the tool.
Right. That's exactly
That's
what
awesome.
I heard.
Yeah. So that's currently my, what I was working through this weekend until 10 o'clock last night, when the bearing housing for the one spindle was like, nah, I'm good. I'm going to break a corner off, and the screws that normally allow it to go up and down are now doing this. They're waving at me. So spent this morning conversing with a friend that's a much better machinist, has a big CNC tool. Like, maybe I just have him make me a new housing so I know it fits. He in turn found measurements online, so I can actually go home, measure mine, see if it is different or not. And I'm either having him custom make me one or paying another $150 for
Oh,
another
dear.
parts and waiting for.
You know, there's a repeat behavior pattern here for Scott. He buys
Yes.
these old things
And then he pays for it still.
and he
Yes.
pays for it still.
Yeah. Sometimes you just need to take the money that you don't want to spend, put it with the money that you did want to spend, and buy a better tool.
But you've also gotten really good tools out of that too.
I
so-
have, and
Yeah.
I'm
And you
learning.
learn so much.
I'm learning how the tools work, which is kind of invaluable.
Yes.
I'm understanding what needs lubricated, how and why. And I am that kind of person. I need to see how it functions for it to understand. I can read a book 14 times and still need to see it torn apart. So I am glad about that. But I just want to use my darn mill already.
Right. Right. And my mom sent me a thing and was talking about, certain type of guy specifically that, when a project needs done at the house, instead of paying somebody to have it done, in a day or a week, they'd rather go out, buy the tools, spend 5 to 6 years, doing it,
Mm-hmm.
and, still only do it 80 or 90% of the way. And I was like, oh, I feel seen.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
ugh.
The
Yikes.
difference is, like I was okay with the chip out of the bearing housing until the pins were flapping at me. And
Right.
and if you paid a service and it
Correct.
showed up with a chip out of it, you'd be like, what the heck?
Yes.
Well, I understand that I tried to make it spin and it didn't spin, and then the corner came off, and I'm like, well, I can't blame anybody but myself right now.
Right.
And this is gonna cost me money, but maybe I can make it work anyway.
Yeah.
It's just that weird situation. You understand the blows of it.
And life's not perfect either, right?
No.
And so if we as a consumer kind of conjure up that, hey, I'm going to spend not even a tenth, right? Because a good quality mill, you're still not even a tenth,
Oh, no,
basically.
yeah, I'm still in good standing financially with all this
right,
repair.
and that's the challenge, is to go that cognitive dissonance, to go, I'm not even spending a tenth, and so yes, I'm willing to subject myself to these problems. But if I'm paying a fair price, then I better receive a fair service or a fair
Correct.
product.
Correct.
And I think that then is the disconnect, that obviously we are subjected to both personally and professionally constantly.
Well, and we put a load on ourselves. Like I currently am wanting to finish a part for a shop project, and I feel a sense of urgency with the mill because I need to get this done already.
Sure. Jeffrey, how was your weekend?
It's been a week. Let
Yeah?
me tell you. So, well, I'm instead of just doing the weekend, I'm gonna go all the way back to Tuesday,
Oh dear.
because Tuesday after I left work, my wife wanted to go meet a puppy, and
forgot
so we
already.
went.
Feels like so long
We,
ago.
we met this family at a dog park who was supposed to bring a puppy. They had 2 fluffy ones in the picture. They had 4 puppies total.
Mm-hmm.
2 fluffy ones, and she said, bring one of the fluffy ones. I don't care, male or female. We'll bring our big dog to meet and make sure that they're okay together.
Mm-hmm.
We get to the dog park, and I'm gonna have to modify the story a little bit so that I don't curse on air. But we get to the dog park. They pull up, and they hop out with both fluffy dogs. And I look over at my wife. I look back at the dogs, and I literally out loud say, "Oh, sugar honey iced tea," because I realized what that meant. And she immediately goes, "We're taking them both home, right?" Yep. Yes, we are.
I told my wife, and she looks at me. She goes, "Did they not learn anything from us about littermate dogs?" And I was like, "I
Hey.
clearly it's on deaf ears,
They have 2 more still that they're trying to
No,
find homes
no,
for.
Rottweiler,
Rottweiler, German Shepherd,
they're
and
so beautiful.
chocolate lab
They're
mix.
so beautiful. They're so beautiful. But you know what? My boy just passed, and I'm good for a
Listen,
while.
we have. I've
My
realized
wife is like, "We need one now," and I'm like, "No."
this is our household. We're like the Hydra or whatever. You cut one head off, you get 2 more back. Because
Like
our dog had
Hydra.
just passed, and now we have 2 more.
We're like, well, yeah, I can't say. I do the same thing with the cat. So
I know.
I
know.
I'm concerned.
Well, at this point, I'm at home. I'm just saying, oh, Jeff and Kristen went and looked at some puppies, and she's like, you don't go to look at puppies.
You don't look. You don't just look at puppies.
No. So there was that. Obviously, I found doing my oil change last weekend that I had an oil cooler leak in the Gladiator. That was fun. So I did that Saturday. Spent 4 or 5 hours here at the shop working through all of that.
I'm glad we have an expert on that now, though.
I don't know about that. So, and then I worked on that planer, finally getting that put back together on Sunday.
Nice.
And what doesn't exist are the set bolts that hold the knives in. They just simply do not exist.
Oh dear.
So I ordered a size up because those do exist. and I did some custom grinding, and the heads were actually 10 mil socket instead of the 5/16 that the other one was. So I didn't have a wrench thin enough. So I did some custom grinding on a wrench. This is why you own multiple wrenches. So I did some custom grinding on the wrench to fit it down in there to be able to turn those. And
Sure.
so that's all locked together, cleaned up, put back together. I'll be able to start planing some wood and probably start working on Davey's desk here in the very near future now.
Awesome. Yeah, that would be very exciting to kind of round out his work area. People have been asking me about how we've been moving internally. And I'm like, well, we moved so that we could expand our merchandising space, and I'll be very excited to actually see that come to fruition.
My wife jumped in the comments and said they're the smartest Chaos editions yet.
Perfect. I'm glad you guys are happy. That's what matters. I had an awesome kind of weekend myself.
Yeah, I saw some social media pictures with the waterfall in the background.
Yeah.
Looked like you had a awesome time.
Yeah. So honestly, it was a big weekend for a number of aspects for me personally, professionally, whatever. Use the Jeep as a pick 'em up truck, as we should all do, right?
Absolutely.
Especially, I am working on a little project for the house build. I'm calling it my power station, which basically, again, we've talked about some of our resourcefulness with forks on our tractors, and we have forklift here and so on and so forth. But I'm looking to not just, I have a fairly substantial generator, and I'm not looking to just kind of permanently mount it like you would see like a Generac, which is probably the most, you can conjure that up. But I actually want to have a semi-mobile workstation. Now, I run my generator solely on propane natural gas. And so I have a very large tank associated with that. And then I actually have battery backup, and I mounted an air compressor. So I am working on my power station this weekend, and I got it fairly well sealed in so that it will be both plumbed into my home, but also as needed, I can move it over to the shed that we built, Jeffrey and I built together. Jason helping at points as well, but, primarily Jeff and I putting that together. Or as needed, I could bring it into town and we could use it here as, absolute backup for whatever minor things we might need. So that was pretty cool. And as I mentioned, some other, home project stuff. But then we did a bunch of Jeep road tripping over the weekend, and we went chasing waterfalls. And
Isn't there a song about not doing that?
no, yeah, right. So we made sure, as in a true Simpson fashion, we made sure to go chase waterfalls.
Did you play the song on the way?
You know what, Jeff? That would have made too much sense.
You should have.
We
You should have absolutely played TLC.
We should have. So
I wasn't the only one in it playing in my head when.
Oh,
no,
100%. The second he said it, I'm like, there it is.
Well,
There's
we
that
had
song.
had the opportunity. We don't advertise it a whole lot, but oftentimes, I think again potentially makes us a little unique is our willingness to transport Jeeps for customers. That kind of that hunger that says that we're not just hooking it up to a slingback rollback pickup truck, but whether it's got to go on a truck and trailer behind one of your guys' vehicles, whether it's us driving it somewhere. This idea that
We've literally gone and picked them up off the side of the road for customers.
100%.
So-
We've called in our wives to participate with us.
Yep.
So this idea that I don't want to say whatever it takes to get the job done for the Jeeper, but that is what extends this business into the Jeep life, right?
We do our darndest.
Correct. So a customer was going out of town for just under 2 weeks and had really been hoping to get his Jeep back prior to him going out of town. And honestly, I didn't want it sitting around the property any longer. Scott really busted his hump to try and get this Jeep turned out. So as part of our family fun day, Sunday, we delivered this to west side of Cleveland, east of Sandusky, basically, and dropped this Jeep off. My wife and kids jumped in her Jeep, and we were in the customers and drove it to his house and did his outtake procedure and everything there. He has a beautiful homestead, and he, as so many of our customers are, they're so gracious to us that, oh, can we get you drinks? Oh, go into my backyard, check out the view, all this kind of stuff. And that's a very cool thing that we get to share. It kind of goes beyond just, hey, did you do an oil change? You know? We had that, and then we went to find waterfalls. And then if you're on my personal social page, you'll know that I made a very big commitment this weekend, and a public proclamation.
Putting sweaters on your cats.
That happened too.
I did.
That happened too. Actually, better yet, baby clothes.
Yes.
Because my children and my wife were so convinced that we needed to find cat outfits, which we could not find.
Yes.
So they were like, just screw it, and we're going to buy baby clothes.
I saw Rose had the appropriate baby clothes for her cat.
So what I heard is I need to forward those pictures onto your wife.
Oh yeah,
of
the puppies. No, we joined Costco.
Yay!
So
Is that where the baby clothes came from?
it is where the
Perfect.
Oh my
I was like, boy,
goodness.
that cat must be well mannered, because I would have gotten my arm gnawed off
Right.
if I would have tried to get that over their
Oh.
head.
In the Simpson household, you are just submissed into into loving cuddles. So you don't have a choice. Is
Yeah.
really what it comes down
That's
to.
funny.
So yeah, you'll see we're pretty jazzed up. Somebody commented, I don't know if I've ever seen a family photo at the front of a Costco before, and I was like, well, here we are, buddy. Here we are.
You don't know us.
That's right. That's right. So pretty fun week.
There was probably photos of you signing the membership agreement and
Handing the card.
and my
there's a whole TikTok series on it.
right. And my white Taco Bell sunglasses absolutely made the cut with my membership card.
That's funny.
Yes. Oh, what an adventure it was. So,
But you got the $1.50 hot dogs. That's
but
all
we
that
got
matters.
the $1.50 hot dogs. That is all that matters. So, good weekend had by all, folks. We've got a lot to do. We're pushing into Easter weekend or so. We do have one more podcast for you before we are off that one day, as mentioned before. So we'll be back next week talking about something. Jeff, do you remember offhand what we were talking about next week?
Nope.
Nah, it's going to be a surprise.
It's
to
in
you.
the production notes.
It's in the production notes. We'll have something exciting for you nonetheless. I know we were excited about it. Jeff was real excited about Garage Talk and storage.
Well, because I'm
organization.
actively redoing my whole
Yes.
garage right now. So
100%. I
so
get
it's
that.
fresh on
So,
the mind.
Fresh on the mind.